Oki Niksukwa, Danako Buganakapi, Nistu Dene Pikani. My name is Ryan, or my colonial name is Ryan Deranger. My traditional name in Blackfoot is Gitz, Gitz Crazy Boy. I'm a 25-year-old youth worker. I'm a youth worker first, and I am a political activist second. So it's a really close second, but I'm a political activist second. I live up in Fort McMurray, about 50 kilometers south of, about 40, 50 kilometers south of the tar sands. And the band that I'm registered to is Athabasca Chippewa First Nations, which is directly downstream of the tar sands. I came out here today to speak at with the Rural Bank, AGM, because they're one of the heavy financiers or lenders to the tar sands. It's only 2%, but I think it's like $16 billion that they've lent this year. Overall, it's been about $300 billion. I don't really have a lot of faith in corporations. I don't have a lot of faith that will be heard. And part of the reason why I'm speaking out today is to expand a lot of their minds on what's happening over the tar sands. As it stands in my mind and the minds of a lot of Fort Chippewa First Nations and Mikisew Cree, we are on a crash course with direct action. And it's coming. How severe that direct action will be will actually depend on all of you. How much you can pressure our local government here, how much you can pressure them federally and provincially, as well as the rest of the country. It all depends on you guys. The longer that we take to act, the more violent this direct action will be. And I'll get into the reasons why. We have, like, as First Nations people here, you guess First Nations and Indian and Native American, those are like really new concepts. I personally am older than that concept. Saying like, you know, I'm First Nations or saying I'm Native, that sound wasn't even emitted, you know. In Blackfoot, we'd say an antipathy, and that just simply means human being. We were human beings, and the tribes that we came from were, you know, Blackfoot or Dene. But since colonization, since they first landed, it's just been like wave after wave of genocide. And they've pushed my people back further and further and further and just completely neglected them. All issues, all problems that we've had have always kind of been swept under the rug. We're kind of painted in two portraits, either the radical Indian or the, you know, the sympathetic, empathetic Indian who, you know, what's his name? Iron Eyes. I don't know if you guys watched that old 70s commercial about Native crying when the trash hits his foot. That's basically how we're either protesters or we're crying about this issue. But what makes this issue so unique is where the tar sands is located. If it was located downtown Toronto and you guys had all the same problems that we were having up north, it would be shut down overnight. Like, I guarantee you, overnight it would be shut down. But because we're located in the middle of the boreal forests, way up in the middle of, you know, of northern Alberta, you guys don't see the damage that's being done. Basically what it is, it's an environmental holocaust. It's a destruction of everything. They clear-cut mass sections of land. For every barrel of oil, they got to dig up 5 tons of earth. For every barrel of oil, it's between 2 to 4 barrels of fresh water that has to be used just to produce 1 barrel of oil. And it's not like we're running out of fresh water throughout Canada. We're polluting. Oh, and then there's a process, because oil up there doesn't come as just like oil. We don't drill into the ground and find oil and extract it. It's actually stuck within these things called tar sands. They have to heat it up, they boil it, and then they extract the oil from it. They use coal to heat it up. It's a very energy-intensive process. But while they're doing it, they're expanding out like this. The best pop culture reference I can give you is, I know most of you guys probably all seen Lord of the Rings. When you drive up to Fort McMurray, it's this beautiful, lush boreal forest. There's so much biodiversity. You know, there's animals, you get to see this is an amazing 4-hour drive. And then you hit the actual tar sands, and all of it is gone. A couple years ago, they were just like destroying everything. And all it was just like a white desert. And I thought, why are they making a white desert? And it didn't make any sense to me. But I realized they're extracting all this land out, and they're just taking the middlings, which is a tailings pond. That's what we call it, a tailings pond. They got the middlings, and they just start dumping it. And so you have this huge, huge, huge white desert that you would see. And it's just like for miles around. That was a couple years ago. Now, it's filled with toxic waste. This waste is seeping into the Athabasca River right now. There's a slow, it's like the world's slowest oil spill, seeping right through the water, which is like, it's weird because you figure if they're clearing out a whole bunch of land and they're going to put this amazingly crazy toxic substance onto the earth, you figure they would layer it with something. Like even saran wrap, anything. They would just like lay something down and start pouring stuff. But no, they pour it directly onto the earth. And because it's on the earth, it's slowly seeping into the Athabasca water basin, which connects all the way up to the Arctic River. And what I'm telling you guys right now, some of you guys might be hearing it for the first time, but we've been talking about this for the last like 20 years, which is surprising because we're at this boiling point right now up north. There is a rare kind of cancer that we're having. It's got this crazy acronym, BL. It's like bile duct something cancer. You get it. With medical treatment, you can last up to 3 months. Without medical treatment, you're dead within a month. Statistically speaking, Fort McMurray has about 80,000, 90,000 people. If you pull all the camp workers into the city, that's about 100,000 people. So statistically speaking, some unfortunate, unlucky soul should get that bile duct cancer. However, in the community of Fort Chip, there's 1,500 people there. And so far, there's been about 20 confirmed cases of this rare cancer. When we bring this to industry, industry plays this crazy like switch foot, well, we're doing this, so it's obviously got to be on one of the other companies. One of the other companies says, no, it's got to be somebody else. The cancer rate's so bad that my buddy Lionel Lapini, his neighbor's dog actually got sick, and they, checked it out. They had to put it down because they found all these cancerous tumors within the dog. Personally, though, like I said, I was a youth worker. I'm still a youth worker. And I was going up against this guy who was like 50, and he had a son who was my age. And we were going for the same job. And it was just down to me and him, and we had like an interview, a preliminary interview, then an actual interview. Between the preliminary interview and the actual interview was about a month. After the preliminary interview, his son got sick, so they took him to the hospital. Before the actual interview we had, his son was dead. 25-year-old boy, or 24-year-old boy at the time. To be like Dene, to live up north, we do traditional hunting. Some of you guys might be vegetarians and might not agree with it, but we do hunting. We've always done hunting. In order to be like Dene, that's a part of your life. You had to be a hunter, you had to be a trapper. Traditionally speaking, you couldn't separate that because that was the only way that we could live. But there was a very delicate and beautiful responsibility and relationship we had with the animals that we took, because we didn't just see them as like animals. We saw them as a spirit. Not only a spirit, but a spirit that would come to you to give its life up. It's not like we would walk into the bush and kill the first thing we seen. There was a fasting process that we would go through. And you also got to remember that we killed this moose, we would bring it back, we would chop it up, and we would pass it out to the rest of the community. But we understood a relationship with, and our dependability on this animal, or these animals. There's this crazy rising trend happening right now that we're seeing more and more of. And when we kill a moose and we go hunting around the area of like Fort McMurray, which is located like 50 kilometers south of the tar sands, we're finding moose, cutting them open and finding a whole bunch of sores on their bodies. And it's not, I said this once and I got this response from this dude and I was really trying not to get mad, but he's like, well, why don't you just eat around the sores? And I was like looking at him and I was like, you know what? So we don't eat this one moose here, and we eat another moose that doesn't have sores. Essentially, we're still eating around those sores because maybe this animal still has those cancer-causing agents. They just haven't popped up yet. And it got me to think, and I got a lot of other people to think. They did a traditional hunting trip, and they had to go 230 or 240 kilometers southwest to go hunting, to kill a bunch of moose and bring it back, just so they could pass on that relationship, or get youth to understand the relationship, the intricate and beautiful relationship we have with the earth and with the animals. But they couldn't do it traditionally in their own area. In 2009, there was an oil spillage from, I think it was Suncor. They had an oil spillage. It was just something that happens. Accidents happen. They're bound to happen sooner or later. Walmart, Superstore, accidents happen. They had an oil spillage right into the Athabasca water basin. It was around wintertime. Immediately, they got on the phone and they called the other companies and said, turn your taps off. There's no more water intake, which is good. It shows a responsible company. They're informing the other companies not to take any water in. However, it was up to 30 hours later that they actually called the community to Fort Chip and told them not to take any water in. So they had this toxic spill. Nothing was done about it. Nothing at all. It went to everybody else first before it actually went to this community. Again, Suncor, they have this crazy track record. For 3 years in the early 2000s, they were found of just actually dumping raw toxic waste into the Athabasca water basin. For 3 years. They didn't tell anybody whatsoever. They just dumped it right into the Athabasca water basin. And it was only after a whistleblower finally came out that this was brought to surface. Which makes you wonder. This is one company that got caught. There's a whole bunch of other companies out there. What have they plotted? What are they plotting right now? And what are they continuously getting away with? They paid off everybody. They paid off the safety inspector. They paid off everybody. For 3 years they're doing this. I just wonder what these other companies are doing right now. Yeah, there's a time where you could actually paddle down the Athabasca River and you could just drink. You could just like paddle down, get thirsty, cup some water and drink it. But nobody's doing that anymore. Everybody's afraid of the water up there. They're getting their water shipped in from Fort McMurray. They're getting their water shipped in from Edmonton. It's crazy to think that almost 15 years ago, this community was living sufficiently off the land. Hunting, trapping, fishing. We had muskrats. Muskrats was like a huge part of what we would trade and what we would sell. A couple years back, they were starting to see muskrats with their noses bleeding, their eyes bleeding, and their ears bleeding. And that was from the water. And then the muskrats all left. They're not in the area anymore. Since June 21st, 1899, we've had federally protected rights to hunt and fish. Like I said, being a Dene, it was just part of being a Dene, just to go hunt and go fish. You know, you would have better luck trying to separate the color from a door physically, pull the color right off a door, than separate a Dene man or woman from their ability to hunt and fish. These are federally protected rights for us just to go out, hunt, and eat. But what does that mean if the things that we're hunting and eating are killing us? Silently. And these treaties, these peace treaties, were only signed because we'd be able to hunt and fish. They wouldn't have been signed any other way. There's no way we would have signed at all. I don't understand, like today I don't even understand why the government doesn't like step in and get involved. Because when you think about it, it's not really a treaty rights issue. It's beyond that. It's a human rights issue. The ability to drink the water around you, the ability to eat, but most importantly, the ability to live. If you come up north to where we're from, if you come up there and you decide to eat or drink the water, eat the wild game, which we've done forever, you're really playing cancer roulette. And not just like any kind of cancer, like a rare type of cancer. The treaties that we signed also predate the Declaration of Human Rights for about 48 years. Why it's coming to that point of direct action is you have to ask yourself, honestly, how many of your own brothers and sisters, you know, your mother, your father, if you have any children, or any of your cousins that you could bury? How many of them could you bury without getting mad, without getting riled or pissed off? These people are dying right now, and they're dying in vain. And there's no answers. There's no answers being brought forth. I talked to the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs and Northern Development. It's not even on his radar to talk about, or to find out what's causing the cancer. Cancer's not even on his radar whatsoever. When we're actually talking about Fort McMurray and the province of Alberta, right in the middle of the conversation, he asks me about Ganawage, which is in Montreal, and in Ontario, and he says, what about the smuggling that's happening there? How can you justify that? And I'm like looking at him like, we're not even talking about the Haudenosaunee and their freedom to just trade or do what they're doing. We're talking about my people that are dying right now. The government